Right. Good evening. Good evening, members, officers. Thank you for joining tonight's meeting of the Local Plan Advisory Panel. We were just a few minutes late starting while we sourced some water, which I, for one, will definitely need during the meeting. I've no apologies for absence. Are there any declarations of interest? No, that's okay. I'm not aware of any items of urgent business. So item 4 then takes us to the draft public minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of October. Have you all been able to see those? Got a copy of those? Any questions on the minutes? Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You might recall at the last meeting, I raised a query with you about the statement of community involvement, about the fact that it had been as was reported in the last meeting, it was reported that a delegation allegedly had been in place to make minor modifications to the scheme of community involvement back in February, and I have requested for a copy of that scheme of delegation and for information. You said you were going to ask the director. It's under Part B, I think, of
Page 4.
Page 4 of the minutes, which it doesn't actually say it's the statement of community involvement, so I don't know why it doesn't say that, but which it should do. Because otherwise the minutes are very bland and it doesn't make any sense unless you match it up with the original report. But you did say that you were going to ask the director, that's David Atkinson, who wasn't at the meeting last month, for an explanation and for that information. I still haven't received it, so I'm now asking you, Chair.
Right, okay, yeah, no, you're making a reasonable point. We've got the director here. We did discuss it. And my understanding was that it was being addressed and it was going to be published as a delegated decision, but the director is here to be able to.
My understanding, Councillor King, is that it was sent to you via Democratic Services.
I have received nothing, David. Is it on the slow boat somewhere? I mean, you know, not being funny.
That was my understanding. I can send it to you if that would help.
What I'm trying to do is get clarity on this matter, because originally, going back some way in this process, a question was posed to you and by myself and other councillors about whether there will be an update of the statement of community involvement be required, and the negative answer came back. I don't have a minute of that because I think it was probably one of these briefing meetings which are all hush hush at the time, so we haven't got any kind of evidence of that. But then it transpired an update was done, but that only came out when the Regulation 19 was actually published, that the SCI had been updated at the very last minute, and I want to understand what the circumstances were surrounding that, because as far as I'm aware, updating the SCI doesn't have a delegation to officers. If there is, I'd love to see where that came from, because the last time we updated it was a number of years before, and I like to understand how where that delegation's come from, where is it emanated from, how long ago was it made, etc., etc. And I think it's really important, because there have been, as we discussed at the last meeting, a number of residents, feedback from residents to us as elected members to say they were not happy with the consultation process at Regulation 19. Therefore, we have a responsibility, a duty to report that and say, well, okay, if we had SCI and it was amended, why didn't we get involved as councillors? Because it's a policy, and policies of council are decided by council, to the best of my knowledge. So unless we're given a delegation,
yeah.
It's a very long.
There was a. As I understand it, Councillor King, there was thanks first of all for raising it, because when I exercise delegated authority, those delegated decisions are published on the website through a delegated decisions log. And as I understand it, the monitoring officer identified that though the proper process had been followed and sent to our colleagues, it had been missed. That is now published online, so that delegated decision is online, and it was taken on the 18th of June by myself, but I can forward you a copy if that helps, because it's now online. The need to update the statement of community involvement was from the regulations. It needs to be updated every 5 years. So the previous statement of community involvement was adopted 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We were obliged to look at it and review it, not adopt it again. When the review was undertaken, it was identified that it was only factual updates that were needed. There were no other updates needed. There were no material updates needed. They were just factual updates. So the view was taken by myself that that fell under my generic delegated authority to run the Department for Planning, and that delegation is in the Constitution. And that delegation is referred to in the delegated decision note that was published. Well, I took the decision on the 18th of June, I think it was, from memory, and that's now online on the delegated decisions log. It's apologetic. I think colleagues apologise for not being put on there at the time. They normally are, but that was put on. That is now online. So that's the background to that.
Okay, so can I, if I may, Chair, this is quite important matter, because I know that it needed updating every 5 years, because the last time it was updated, it was done by the Cabinet, and it came to Council to be a recommendation to Council to be approved. And what I'm trying to understand is 18th of June would be actually after the date when Regulation 19, the draft proposed local plan, went out to public consultation. So I'm not sure how you could have done a delegated decision after the Regulation 19 went out to consultation. So I think you just asked, this is just raising more questions. So I would like something in writing as soon as possible with an explanation. You can just put what you've just told me now, but I would like something in writing, please. And Chair, I'll put you on notice. I am going to take this further because I'm not happy at all right now with what I'm being told.
Perhaps you've not reflected on the bit that I heard after we had this discussion last time, was that there were no changes, no material changes were required to the
Well,
document
that's
to
your
make
view.
it.
That's your view. That may be the officer's view, but that might not have been members' views if members had been afforded the opportunity to actually review the policy. If we were never afforded the opportunity to review the policy, how do we know that we, as the constituted members of the council, wouldn't have actually made any changes to the statement of community involvement, given that, our community might have wanted us to make changes? I don't know, because we were never afforded that opportunity to consider it. So that is the important point, Chair, that if we've never been given the opportunity to reconsider whether our SCI was fit for purpose, and it may have only needed minor modifications, but isn't that our responsibility as councillors to decide policy, to make those decisions, unless we've given a specific delegation? And now David Stoney just told us that he believed that he had a general delegation under the council's constitution, in which case I'd like that in writing, and then I'll consider how to take that further. Thanks very much.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
We'll send in the document.
I'll send you the document, Councillor King, with the delegation. And it was obviously the advice was taken at the time from the monitoring officer as well. So yeah.
I like the explanation that you believe, what you've just said, and I like that in writing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor King.
Any other issues on the minutes? Right, all agreed. Thank you. So we're going to now discuss item 5, which is the 5-year housing land supply. There's going to be a presentation by officers on the council's 5-year land supply. I'm expecting that we will also want to cover this in the second part of the meeting, the exempt section. So if you've got questions that may be better covered during the exempt part, I would ask you to keep them. I'm mindful of how people might want to treat this information or use it. So ask your questions by all means, but we may want to deal with them in the second part. But I'll move straight over to the presentation. Who's starting? Rob?
coming out. See 5 year marking supplies. That's it, that's the trajectory. That's the first effect. Do we have a limit?
Do we have enough paper copies to hand round to everyone? That's the alternative.
All right. Already. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Sorry about the IT issue there. It seems to be working okay now. So yeah, I'm just going to update members on the latest 5 year housing land supply position. So we've updated this based on the most up to date data that we've got at the moment, which is to the 1st of April 2025. Obviously, we need to keep this up to date on a regular basis. So the 5 year supply, as it shows on the bottom row, is around 3.1 years. That's the latest position. Obviously, just to put that in context, that's below the 5 years required by government. Clearly, the situation's changed quite significantly over the last few months, up until the government published the new NPPF and new standard methodology in just before Christmas, so December 2024. The council had well over 6 years supply. We obviously lost the supply overnight on publication of the new housing figures from government. So at that point, it dropped to about 3.5 years, based on the data we had at that time. We've now updated all the information to the 1st of April 2025, and it now stands at 3.1 years. So the local housing need, we have to calculate it against the local housing need figure, using the government standard method, because the current plan was adopted in 2019, so it's more than 5 years old. So the current local housing need figure is 735 homes a year. To that, we need to add a 5% buffer, which is what government policy requires. That obviously takes the figure to 771 per year. And if you multiply that over the 5 years, we've got a requirement of 3,857. Obviously, these figures are rounded, but give or take a little bit. We've got last year we built 491 homes, which is quite a lot lower than some previous years. But against that that 5-year requirement of the 3,857 figure on the second row down. The fourth row down shows the projected supply, which is about 2,400 homes. So obviously that's lower than the requirement of 3,857, and that results in a supply of about 3.1 years. So that's the current situation based on the latest data. Obviously, we can come on and talk about implications of that, but ultimately it means that the tilted balance in the NPPF, which is what we refer to, the presumption in favour of sustainable development, basically applies, and it's the idea of that is to release sites through the development management process. Basically, that's what the tilted balance ultimately is intended to introduce the release of appropriate sites. So that's the 5-year supply position. The latest update prior to publication of this, it was at 3.5 years. Obviously, there's a breakdown there on the slide of what makes up the supply. Some are local plan allocated sites from the 2019 plan, some are neighbourhood plans. We've got the Market Harbour SDA on there, and major and minor sites. I'm not going to go through all of the breakdown in detail. It's all published in the 5-year supply document, and members can obviously have a look at that if they wish to in more detail.
Okay. Can you just cover the reduction, because it just went down a bit more right at the end, didn't it? Because the site, you had to take a site out, is that right? Or a site dropped out, so we've dropped to 3.1.
So I think one of the reasons why it dropped was there was a couple of reasons really, but the standard method when published in December originally by government was 723 homes a year, but we're required to take into account the latest data releases on housing stock and affordability, and they were published some months after. I think probably one of them was published in May time. So what that's resulted in is the standard method figure increasing slightly to 735 homes from the 723, which was published by government at Christmas. That's going to happen annually. Every year new data is published, and the standard method requires us to take that into account. So we might get a bit of creep up or down each year, depending on what happens with the level of housing stock and what happens with the affordability element of the methodology.
Right, questions? Councillor King.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, for going through that, although obviously you did suggest that might be, or this might be where we would be. So what I'd like to understand then is what around the housing delivery test, which again will be published in December 25, what is our working assumption then for the 21 to 24 period in terms of housing delivery, if we think the housing delivery requirements from government is going to be the same as last year, if I can put it like that? What's our working assumption that we're working on at the moment that we think it's going to be? Because that's obviously the driver here, and so we must have some working assumption by now of what we think it's all, how that's going to stack up. Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of the housing delivery test, that looks backwards. So the current local housing need figure won't apply to the next publication. So you don't backdate the local housing need, the new local housing need.
Yeah, it's in terms of whether we need a 20% buffer, refer you to paragraph 2.4. So what you've said there is that the 20 to 23 period, we had 210% supply. So, okay, so if there's going to be a refresh of a housing delivery test in December this year, what is our housing delivery 21 to 24? And obviously you've only given us the 24 data in the report. I haven't got, I mean, obviously we could go look it up if I really want to be pedantic, but it's a lot easier for me to ask you now, what does that kind of look like if those numbers the HDT says the same, you know, the actual requirements, which it will,
Yeah.
broad brush it will. Are we looking at a 20% buffer this year, or are we looking at next year maybe?
No, I don't think we're basically the 20% buffer applies when the housing delivery test drops below 85%. And we're going to be quite significantly over that when the next publication comes. Obviously, government hasn't published the HDT results. I don't know why there seems to be. I don't know whether there's been a bit of a delay this year or not. But the housing delivery test, the next one published, won't be, because you don't backdate the local housing need figure. It will be based on the old figures. I mean, what we've done is we've not run the figures all the way through yet for the housing delivery test. Obviously, we will need to do that, but given that the way the way you calculate the requirements for the housing delivery test is quite complicated, because you calculate it based on so for example, the 2024-25 figure will be really complicated, because we had the local plan for part of the 24-25 year of 557 year. Then we had the old local housing need figure of 510 for probably about 6 months. Then we have the new local housing need figure of 723.
Okay.
So it's quite, what I'm saying is it's quite complex how you calculate it.
Okay.
I appreciate what you're saying, but we just need to work through the figures. But at the moment, we're not forecasting the housing delivery test when the new one's published. Usually they publish them in December. We're not anticipating that dropping below anywhere below the 100% at this point.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Right. I think then that deals with the open part of the meeting. So we now need to pass the resolution to go into private session. To comply with the Act, I will read out the following: that the public and press be excluded from the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the matters yet to be discussed involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by paragraph 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Would someone like to propose that? Thank you, David. Darren seconded. All those in favour? That's carried. So if we can turn the public off.